Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, providing education and life skills solutions designed to empower individuals and the families of those with complex disabilities. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More at marycariola.org.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Well, this hour we have the third and final conversation in our series with the candidates for Rochester Mayor. We have previously sat down with Shashi Sinha, Councilmember Mary Lupien, and today we welcome the incumbent, Mayor Malik Evans, who is running for re-election. The Democratic primary is June 24th, and the primary in the city of Rochester tends to be decisive. This campaign has covered a lot of issues, from jobs and development to the city of Rochester's response to the Trump administration, to housing, human rights, public safety. All three candidates will join us for a Voice of the Voter debate on May 28th, 2 weeks from tonight. Here on Connections, we sit down with them individually to explore the issues. And Mayor Malik Evans, welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Good to be with you.
And I forgot to ask you before the program, Mr. Mayor, is there a website you want to let people know that they can visit?
MalikEvans.org, MalikEvans.org.
All right, there you go. MalikEvans.org for more information on the mayor. When did you know that you wanted to run for re-election?
I would say I knew probably mid last year when I knew that we had a lot of momentum. Your colleague interviewed me and he asked me, you use the word momentum a lot. I said, yes, that's important. But I knew that there was work to be completed. But then it crystallized on January 20th when I said, oh, yeah, it's good. It's good that I'm doing this because, as you know, I've been having some interesting goings on with the federal administration. And in fact, my budget is a budget, but I have a backup budget in the event that we lose millions of dollars from the federal government. I was just in Washington, D.C. Last year, and I think last week, as a matter of fact. So now more than ever, I think that we need an individual. You know, I ran about building bridges, and boy, is that reinforced when I look at what's happening now at the federal level and the way cities are being treated.
How much funding could this administration try to cut from you?
Well, if CDBG goes immediately, that's hundreds of positions, and we're talking about probably about $10.5 million, but that's not counting federal highway money. That's not counting other grants that have come. So it's really TBD, very hard to tell, but very concerning for us as the city of Rochester, and everyone should be concerned. Elections have consequences, and people are starting to see the consequences there. It's why very early on in his administration, when they tried to divert NIH funding away from the University of Rochester and other research institutions, and U of R is our number one employer, we immediately joined an amicus brief to say this cannot happen because this will result in the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs in the city of Rochester, which would affect our tax revenue, which would affect economic development in the city, which will affect a lot of families in the city. So we are really dealing with uncharted territory. And unfortunately, Rochester, we're at ground zero. Who would have thought an upstate city? I said this a couple of weeks ago when Holman was visiting and I was convening my Rock Resilience Roundtable. Who would have thought that a city in upstate New York would be on the forefront of the New York Times being talked about? I would not have envisioned that even 6 months ago, but here we are.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the executive director of ICE, who made a show of coming to Rochester as a guest, among others, of the Rochester Police Locust Club. Tom Homan said he wants to support cities who are working with ICE to detain and deport undocumented immigrants. And there's a lot of public debate about whether you should meet with him. Take us through your decision on whether and how you feel about that decision.
Well, if I met with him, I would have invited. I'd invite him. I'd invite him to my Rock Resilience Roundtable, which is a coalition of individuals in the community that are interested about what's happening at the federal level.
But you didn't meet with him.
No,
right?
He didn't meet with me. He didn't meet with anybody. He didn't take any questions from the media. He didn't do anything.
Right. But did you want to meet with him?
He was in and out. If he would have offered, I would have said, come over to First Genesis, where I have a group of community citizens that want to ask you some questions and hear about what it is that you are exactly trying to do. Why is the 10th Amendment being violated? Are we getting rid of habeas corpus? These are all things that are important to a city of Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. We would have liked to hear from him on that, but obviously he was here for a quick period of time and he was in and out. But you know, I am just so concerned about put him to the side, but the Medicaid cuts, Head Start cuts to community development block grants, All these things are major issues that will affect our city, and we have to make sure that we prepare for them. But more importantly, we have to push back on it. I was just in D.C. last week with a group of bipartisan mayors, Democrats and Republicans, talking to Democrats and Republicans on the Hill, saying this is what will happen to cities if you do this. This is the progress that will be stalled. HOPRA, housing for people with AIDS, that will go away. How are you going to fill that gap? Roof repair programs for seniors, that's going to go. That will go away. You cut Medicaid. That will have an effect on not only the state's budget, it will blow a hole through it, but it would decimate Monroe County and the city of Rochester and the individuals that are involved in those things. You want safety, you want to have those types of things. You pull the safety net up from someone, and that will have a very negative effect, not just on cities. We obviously, vast majority of Americans live in cities, but who's really also going to be affected are areas that are in rural communities, where they don't have the tax base that we have, where you could maybe increase taxes or have a different levy. And that's the story that we're trying to tell. This is not working with people, and the things that they're doing are not going to bring down prices, are not going to get people employed, and are not going to set people up to have a prosperous future. And that is what we have to continue saying and fighting against.
Well, the federal government moved to strip Rochester of its sanctuary city status, and I want to read some of their filing. In the filing from the feds, they said the following, quote, on March 24th, 2025, local police officers in Rochester, New York, responded to a call for assistance from federal law enforcement officers. To most Americans, that would look like law enforcement at its finest, but not to those leading the city of Rochester. Local political leaders and officials, including Mayor Malik Evans and City Council President Miguel Melendez, criticized the Rochester police officers for doing the right thing because responding to a call for backup and assisting federal law enforcement officers at the scene violated the city of Rochester's sanctuary city policy. This is a lawsuit to put an end to those policies, end quote. What do you make of how they characterized the incident from March 24th?
Well, first off, I would say that they need to watch the body-worn camera footage. And as I said, we will answer that in court. We know that we are on solid ground, and I can't go into all the details because I don't want to give our litigation strategy away. As you know, we usually don't comment on litigation. But what I will say is that they know that this thing, our policy has been around since 1986. I was 6 years old then, almost 40 years ago. We've been here before. It survived the last Trump administration. What they're talking about has nothing to do with the issues at hand. The issue at hand is about, number one, the 10th Amendment, which if you don't know your Constitution, look it up. I carry one with me all the time. I have one in the car. And that means that what is not done with the federal government is left to the states. And also, we are not under any obligation to do the federal government's job. And that is all we are saying. We are not saying that we're interfering. We're not saying that it is not our job to do the work of the federal government. And they cannot come in and commandeer my people, our people, your people, our residents of Rochester, and force them to do whatever it is they want to do. And you can't only talk about the rule of law when it suits you. So, I mean, obviously this will be litigated in court, but we just want to be left alone. And we want to be able to thrive as a city and not be bullied. And that's what this is. This is the suit was delivered to me personally. It's just totally unnecessary. And I think that a lot of it is we have to separate political theater from fact. And what really concerns me is that when you have national leaders behaving in a certain way, local people start taking on that behavior. And that's what I'm concerned about. So when you have bullies, other people start being bullies. When you start having misinformation, other people start taking on misinformation. And we can't have that in our society, in our country. Otherwise, God help us 5-10 years from now when our kids, when the next generation of young people grow up, they're going to say, oh yeah, it's okay to do that. And we can't have that as a city. And the issue at hand has everything to do with federal constitution protections that cities and states get, and the rule of law. And that's our argument. That's our point. Without going into a lot of detail on how we're going to litigate this suit.
No, I understand that. In general, though, do you think police behaved appropriately on March 24th in that incident?
I think if you look at our statement, you saw what we said. The chief was clear. I was clear, and yeah, that's you saw what we said there, and I think that we stand by what we said, and more training, right? We did that. We moved on, but then this was turned into a political hot potato. And you know how I feel, Evan, about that. And that's exactly what this was. It got turned into a political scene, because if we really wanted to have conversation and dialogue about what was happening at the federal government, they would come here and have those conversations with the broader community and talk about, are we getting rid of the right of habeas corpus, which is absolutely concerning. Anyone should be afraid of that. Really? Due process? We're getting rid of due process in this country? I mean, that's a proposal? God help us. You can arrest elected officials. You're threatened to arrest mayors of cities. I mean, my other mayors joke with me, but I mean, it's a joke, but it's really actually concerning. The rule of law is under attack. And then the other thing is that to try to use dollars that are not the federal government's dollars as tools of coercion is absolutely wrong. There are only 2 years, probably in the last 10 years, in which New York State sent more money, got more money from the federal government than it sent. And you know when those years were? You probably can guess. During COVID, right? When we had the American Rescue Plan Act.
20 and 21.
That's right. When we got the CARES Act. Other than that, we send more dollars to Washington, D.C. when we get back. And you're going to tell us that you're going to withhold our money that our residents send? I don't think so. And I think that's really at the heart of the matter. And this should not be a political issue. There should be bipartisan outrage about anyone talking about getting rid of habeas corpus or suspending due process. We can't have that. And this is what we have said. And also forcing cities to do things that they're not required to do according to the U.S. Constitution, which, by the way, I take an oath to uphold, and so does every other elected official.
What happens if this federal suit, if they win? I mean, I take your point that this feels like political theater, but if they are trying to strip you of sanctuary city status and they win, what does that mean for you?
I think we'll cross that bridge when we get it. I don't know what that would mean for us.
You think you're going to win?
I don't telegraph, or I don't like making predictions, but I will tell you that I believe that we are on solid ground.
Now, Councilmember Lupien, who is running for mayor, has said she has tried to introduce an ordinance to strengthen Rochester's status as a sanctuary city and, quote, give it real teeth. But she says the city law department sidelined her proposal for a while. She felt like there wasn't any reception for it. Is that an accurate characterization?
No, it's not an accurate characterization. First off, this city council is a separate branch of government. They can introduce anything they want, and they have in the past. I know. I was on city council when PAB got introduced, and it was at odds with what the law department said. We introduced it anyway, and if you remember, PAB ended up getting passed. So no, I'm not even familiar with that proposal. I'm not even familiar with it. I know nothing about it. I haven't seen it. I don't know anything about it. So I would refer that question actually to city council. They're a separate branch of government. Now,
another thing that we saw this week was that a member of council, Stanley Martin, wanted to hold a Know Your Rights forum. But some members of council have said that Mayor Evans wouldn't allow the use of the Edgerton Rec Center for a Know Your Rights forum. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't know all the details of that. All I know is that you have to get a permit to be able to use any of our facilities. You can't advertise something before you get a permit. And then the other thing is that you have to go through the process. But we also have a policy that we don't do politics in any city building. So, I announced my reelection announcement. I think it was in January. And guess where I did it? I did it at a union hall. I didn't do it in a city facility. So I know that there was some questions there, and I don't know much about the forum. I just don't. I got so much going on running the city, and there was some question there about whether or not this was a political event or was it an event that was held by the majority of city council, 5 members of city council that was holding it. So I don't know all the details there, but I would refer you to the law department to answer.
You think they just
questions.
Didn't follow the process they were supposed to?
I don't. Evan, I'm being completely honest.
You didn't intervene?
No, I don't. Yeah, I just don't. If you think that I have time to worry about permits in city buildings that people are trying to get, there's so many other bigger issues that I'm dealing with right now. I mean, I lost Victor Saunders this week. Who was a
do you want to say a word about Victor?
I do. Who's a very valued member of my team. I lost Martha Hope this past week. I lost a good friend, Rich Norda-Giacomo, this week. So 3 deaths in 1 week. We're dealing with a federal lawsuit that's coming. I just closed a $96 million budget gap. If you really think I had time to deal with that, I just did not.
What was the impact of a guy like Victor Saunders?
Well, I mean, I think you've had him on this program.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, Victor Saunders, first off, when people get sick and sometimes they run out of sick days, people can donate like sick days to people. Victor broke a record. I mean, I've never met a person who everyone said that was a good guy. I mean, I got from the district attorney to folks in the Justice Department that had worked with him to kids that he got jobs when he was a worker at school number 8. All had good things to say about him. And I was with him in his last moments. I witnessed him leaving this earth. And he was just a force of nature. Anything we came up with together, he was he could come up with it. You know, I'd say something crazy like, "Hey, we're gonna launch this Office of Violence Prevention, and by the way, I want to do this thing called the Peace Collective." I came up with the name, and he goes, "Oh yeah, Peace Collective. Okay. What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know. I want you to figure it out." I said, I said we need to have other community organizations involved because they always say that they want their voices to be heard and they're closest on the ground, but they're not used to doing a lot of the administrative stuff. So can we get them connected with the fiduciary to help them do that? And then we need to have a session where we're going to guide them." And he got right to work. And he was able to do that. I said, "Victor, you know, the problem is with these car thefts that we were having in 2023, well, a lot of the kids were between the 12 and 14. I said, "Victor, they can't work." He's like, "Okay, let's see how we can come up with a job." I said, "Victor, let's come up with a jobs program for 12 to 14-year-olds, and they can't work, but they can get a stipend." So he was innovative, he was creative, but just always positive. I mean, I have one-on-ones with my staff. Usually they're Friday afternoons, and you know, I just look for Victor. He comes in at 12. You know, Evan, you know me a long time. I can be cranky sometimes. Victor would come in and say, he'd ask, you know, the executive staff, "Has the mayor eaten yet? Because if he's eaten, that means I can get what I..." and he would always want to make sure I had lunch because he knew he could then pitch me on something that we were going to be able to do. But just very, very, very respected from. There's a great article. There's some great articles and tributes that have been out there, but very, very respected from the local level and all the way to the national level.
Yes,
People listen to him. I mean, so it's difficult. He was a young man. He still was a young man. He still had so much more work to do, and you know, and I'll miss him. But his legacy will live on, and you know, it's why we have the Office of Violence Prevention, and he's helped recruit some great men and women that are now working in that area, and I'm happy about that.
Well, I want to endorse what the mayor says about Victor. I never met anybody who didn't have glowing things to say about him. That's tough loss for the city.
Right.
So on the subject of public safety, you know, speaking of lawsuits you got to deal with here, the PAB loses in court at the state Supreme Court.
Big.
Stands to lose their investigatory powers, and the city of Rochester is appealing now. Do you think the city appeal will win?
I don't know, but I think regardless of the fact, one of the things the chief has said this as well, is you have to have some type of independent entity. We've always had it. If you remember, we had the CRB before, Civilian Review Board. So you have to have something that's there. The chief actually relies on that. I mean, he will regularly, just this past week, he sent 2 policies over, I think one on drones and one on something else that he wanted the PAB to look at and give their thoughts on. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, that was a pretty substantive suit, and you know, again, I can't comment on litigation, but I think that it's to be determined. But I think the bottom line is that regardless of what happens with the suit, is that there will be some form of the PAB. The question will be what powers it will have. Yeah,
and then realistically, with a $3.6 million budget and a significant number of investigators who are supposed to be working individual cases, if they can't do that, I understand saying we got to wait to see what happens with the appeal. If you don't win the appeal, is it time to say we can't fund it at $3.6 million?
Well, I think that would be a conversation with City Council, obviously. Council presents their budget because they report directly to Council. I think that would be a conversation that we'd have to have with City Council.
Do you think the PAB was more productive I don't think anybody disagrees they got off to a rough start as an organization, but do you think that they had found their footing?
Yeah, a marked improvement. I mean, they marked improvement. New executive director, new board. I mean, yeah, absolutely. They absolutely found their footing. I mean, you know, the chief was meeting with them once a week. We have a captain that's assigned to them that was meeting with them regularly. I think that they were finding their footing to see what it is they could do to be productive, and I think that was happening. And I think it still could happen. It'd just be different. It'd just be what their role would be. But no, Mark, much different organization. I know they definitely got off on a tough start, but they definitely found their footing, and I think they really started working. You know, I helped recruit Sherry Walker Court to come in to kind of get it back, and they got some good board members, and I think that helped.
Yeah, and so, you know, as you have probably heard, there's a very difference in tone from the chief of police, who you just mentioned, to the police union and the Locust Club. The Locust Club has said the PAB is anti-cop. The Locust Club has said that Tom Homan was right to come here and that city leadership has been anti-cop. What do you make of the Locust Club's claim? Do you have what's your relationship like with the Locust Club?
I've always had a decent relationship with the Locust Club, but I would say the men and women of the Rochester Police Department got the first on-time contract for the first time in like 15 years under my administration. So there's the answer to that right there.
Not anti-cop. What about 100 positions still unfilled, roughly? Is that right?
Yeah, and that's across the country. You know, I mean,
Yeah, right,
it is very hard to recruit officers. But we just had our workforce development graduation. 12 new folks came in a couple of days ago, and I think that we've been very innovative in Rochester in terms of our career pathways, the public safety programs, our workforce development programs, to try to get new men and women to come join the police departments. But it is a challenge across the country.
Why do you think that is right now?
Well, I think work-life balance. I think people after COVID have really seen the light. I mean, I've talked to people who left their job. Personally, I've talked to people who've had big corporate jobs, and we were just talking about Victor Saunders. I think people are seeing that life is short, life is fleeting, and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to direct my life to be able to do things that may not be as stressful, may not be as difficult to do. I want to spend time with my family more, and I want more flexibility in my jobs. And these are very, very difficult jobs. We find the same challenge in 911, not so much in fire, but 911. We were down a lot of 911 operators. I mean, I'm the type of guy that goes to McDonald's and say, "Hey, I like the cut of your jib. Apply for a 911 job," and I've done it. And they've applied, and we have a pathways, summer career pathways to public safety to be able to recruit for that. So public safety jobs in general have been very difficult to fill across the country, and you really have to find innovative ways to do it. And we survey these people, and guess what? It's not the money. It's not the money. We're one of the most competitively paid police departments per capita probably in the country and in the region. So it's not even a money issue. We just have to find innovative ways to let people know why the career is something that they should invest in.
Bottom line, you're committed to trying to continue to fill those positions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We are.
Do you think there is anything to some of the national unions for police who have said that the criticism in the last 5 years of police have pushed people away from wanting to pursue that as a career?
It could be some of it. I think it's a combination of things. That could be some of it, but I think it really is not just that. I think it's just public safety fields in general. Because look at 911. No one was going around criticizing 911 operators, and we had a similar vacancy level there. We're now almost up to full staff after we go through that. But it's training. I mean, think about the things that you see when you're in those jobs. We've had people who've been 911 operators, and they answer the phone and they're dealing with a family member or a friend or a colleague, and that's a lot, and that's a toll to take in any of these public safety jobs. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Our thinking has changed after COVID. I mean, I remind people, when I became mayor. When I came in, I think the millionth person had died in the United States of COVID. People, okay. And we just act like it didn't happen. Like 1 million people died, folks. I mean, one of my best friends, my Ace Boonkoon, 9 years older than me, I looked up to him. He died in 2021, right? And other people died, and we just kind of just forgot about it. And I think people really reanalyze life after COVID. I talk to people all the time, and I say, when did you decide to do it? Oh, after COVID. So, and we just, for some reason, think that it's just disappeared. So I think that is a major factor in it as well. And I think some of the other work-life balance, some of the conversations maybe that were happening. But I think it's a combination of things. But I tell people, stop discounting COVID. 1 million people can't just die and then we say, oh, we're back to normal. And it was already tough before then. It only exacerbated and highlighted stuff that we already knew was going on, but then it turbocharged it and made it worse.
Well, you mentioned a couple of years ago we saw a surge in car thefts, and a lot of Kias, a lot of Hyundais. I think a significant number last year. I don't know where the numbers are this year. I don't know where that's trending.
Yeah, thank God we're still trending down, and we want to continue to trend down. But 23 was off the charts.
Yeah, it was wild.
It was wild.
And so I bring that up because I know you just referenced it, and one of your opponents in this race, Councilmember Mary Lupien, said on this program last week that she believes the JEDS program is inflating their success rate, kind of cooking the books and covering up the recidivism rate, that the recidivism rate is much higher.
Wow. Well, I'm not aware of that. I mean, I would refer you to the county on that, but I think that's something that you can follow
I know it's a county program.
Yeah, but I don't think the county
But you think the JEDS program's been a good program?
Oh, absolutely. It's been extremely effective. And I would say sometimes it's important to step back and talk to the people that went to the program. And I've done that. I've spoken to the people that have gone through the program. But I think the numbers are the numbers. I mean, either they're inflating them or not, and either they are or they aren't. And I think it would be very instructive, I think, for this program to bring back on the county again and ask them about those numbers. But the numbers that I get from the county, I have no reason to not believe them.
Okay. And then in general, when you look at public safety, you look at violent crime, obviously we saw a pandemic peak, or 2021 especially, and it's been trending downward.
Absolutely. It continues to trend down every year. This past year, 53% reduction. And if you remember, national story in 2023 about Rochester's reduction. We're not where we want to be, but we're great. Thank God we're not where we are. People need to be remembered that in 2021 we had over 80 homicides, the highest ever recorded that we had in the city of Rochester. A lot of it related to the pandemic. Other cities had the same thing, and we had to get to work. I mean, this has not been easy trying to keep these numbers down, and the number of people still walking around with firearms is absolutely crazy, and it's why our numbers of firearms have quadrupled that we've taken off the streets, and that's because of our gun-involved violence elimination program, which I would note one of my opponents has voted against God knows how many times, but she'll say, "Oh, I'm supportive of it." I think that's an important thing to note in this program, because it is important to be a part of the solution. I think that what we have is a lot of people that can point out the problems, but they're not bringing any solutions to the table, and that's what we've tried to do. Be it the gun-involved violence elimination program, the Office of Violence Prevention, the expansion of job training programs, the focus on particularly guns, the JEDS program in partnership with the county, the Fatality Review Committee, our own opioid reduction program. And then also when we talk about public safety, I always want to add this as well. It's just not about violence. It's also about pedestrian safety. And our Vision Zero program is part of that program. Our Nurse Navigator program, which we started in 2022 to get and improve response times for people who have medical events, that's also part of our public safety suite of tools. So we have a lot of different tools that we have used, that we have expanded. Our person in crisis team, when I came in, the person in crisis team had 3 full-timers. We now scaled that up because it was originally supposed to be a pilot, and that is now a full-blown program that has been extremely successful in terms of intervening in people that have mental health issues, which I put at number 1 or number 2 in terms of top issues in our country, the mental health crisis that we have.
Okay, and when I looked at the police portal data, I could be out of date, but I think there have been 8 homicides so far this year.
Yes, I think 7 or 8.
Okay, and 100% involve firearms this year.
This year, yeah, lots more firearms this year as opposed to last year. We had more homicides around this time,
and
they were more they were more they used other means.
Yeah, right. So 7 or 8 out of 8 so far involving firearms. When people are doing that, when people are engaging in this kind of violence, and you're talking about jobs training, and you're seeing the big picture.
Yep.
Or you're talking about giving people a future, a hope.
Opportunity.
What does the future of opportunity and jobs look like in this city to you? I don't expect that across the street we're going to have another Kodak or another Bausch and Lomb. But what does it look like?
It's we used to be a company town.
Right.
We had Kodak, Xerox, Bausch and Lomb, Rochester Products. I'm aging myself because I'm saying Rochester Products.
Big three. Yeah.
We had those. We had those now, but now we are now a town of companies. So what you see more is we were a company town, but now we're a town of companies. And what that means is that you are seeing small and medium-sized businesses drive the government, drive the innovation that we have in our community, and drive the hiring. So you're seeing more of these companies that some of you may not have heard of, but they are now the ones that are hiring folks, and that's what's going to lift our economy. And that's just the way it's going to be. I think, you want to have some big ones that are going to come, but where our focus is how can we bring the company that's going to be the next big one, right? And that's what we see. How do you get like a JCS that I just cut the ribbon on down in the Sibley building that actually has manufacturing that's going there? How do you get them to grow? How do you take advantage of some of the up and coming things in photonics, which is still a big thing in Rochester? I just cut the ribbon on a photonics place that's an international company that's on St. Paul Street, but they're opening their Northeast hub. They opened it here in Rochester, right? And they'll continue to grow and have those folks that are going to be there. We'll have large employers like the University of Rochester, which is one of our largest employers. RGH Healthcare is still a major part of that. But I think you have to look at where the innovation is, and it's going to be in photonics. It's going to be in information. It's going to be in data. It's going to be in knowledge, and it's going to be in power, and knowledge and power and energy. And that is where a lot of the jobs are going. And that's why our workforce development unit in the city, I've grown that because we want to make sure that people are able to be ready for those jobs that are coming. And if they're coming in manufacturing, we want them to be able to do that. I use Hickey Freeman as an example. Hickey Freeman left. We recruited Tom James Company. It's a smaller size footprint, but they're still on North Clinton Avenue, not using the whole factory. The upper factory is housing. The bottom factory is manufacturing. I think that's the way you're going to have to think as you go into the 21st century.
Ken Glazer was on this program yesterday, CEO of Buckingham Properties, and he was talking about his desire to see more businesses be willing to move back to downtown. He said that, especially post-pandemic, it's tough, but he said there has to be an intentional effort to bring the business community, to encourage them to take that step. when companies are on the fence about whether they want to come back to Rochester or come to
They
Rochester
get a
for the
call
first
from
time,
me.
and what are they telling you is not there or is keeping them away?
Well, it's never what's keeping them away. It's just the competition. I mean, the competition is fierce, and I know because I'm tight with tons of mayors. I'm fighting with all my other mayors and other county executives to say, hey, we want to be able to get you there. But I'll tell you what says how they chose it, right? How they decided to be able to come here. And you look at Constellations, for example. They look at the investments that we make, but they look at the knowledge base that we have here. Rochester, hands down, per capita, still the #1 city per capita with patents. Almost anyone you talk to that has a PhD in optics, if you're in Timbuktu or you're in Peoria, Illinois, if you ask them where they got their degree from, you know what they're going to say? University of Rochester. So we are a place that has the knowledge economy. We have the schools and the universities, and that really attracts a lot of people. The other thing that we have, water. You look at Genesee Brewery when they expanded. One of the things they referenced was our water resources. We are one of the few places that still has a water, a lake, a canal, in a river, all within its city, and that's a big deal. And you saw that and your colleague Brian Sharp was interviewing me. He I don't think he got to go down in the bowels with us of the High Falls State Park. I mean, look at that. Water, I mean, just natural water, water everywhere in the city. And at a time where people are going to war over water, thank God we don't have that problem here in Rochester. And that is a major, major asset. And it's something that I tell folks all the time. And they always say, wow, I didn't realize you had all of that. So when I tell people about our natural resources, when I tell people about our talent, and when I tell people about our proximity to just about every major city in the country, because of where we're situated by plane or by car, you can get to most places in a decent amount of time. They'll say, Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance.
Talking to Malik Evans, he's running for re-election. He's one of 3 Democrats on the ballot in the Democratic primary, June 24th. Early voting is June
14th.
June 14th. 14th
right.
through the 22nd for early voting.
Right.
And the Democratic primary is June 24th. MalikEvans.org is the website to learn more about the candidate. Let's take our only break of the hour, and we'll come back. We're going to talk about housing. We're going to talk about his efforts, the mayor's efforts regarding opioids, and a number of other issues with your questions mixed in as well with the mayor.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Highlands at Pittsford, an independent and assisted living community affiliated with the University of Rochester, offering cottage and apartment homes, daily life enrichment activities, and care assistance as needed. More at highlandsatpittsford.org.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Let me take a phone call from a listener, William in Rochester, for Mayor Evans. Go ahead, William.
Yeah, I want to know, why do you oppose a public utility to replace RG&E? It would save money for Rochesterians and be more responsive and responsible than a huge corporation based in Spain.
All right, William, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks,
Mr.
William.
Mayor.
I didn't say I'm not sure where he's saying I oppose a public utility. All I said is that City Council passed dollars for a study, and in order to do a study, it should not just include Rochester; it has to include the entire region. And I've said this multiple times. Rochester has the smallest budget. The Rochester City School District just passed the budget. It was $1.1 billion. My budget is $27 million less than it was last year because we lost ARPA funding. Monroe County has a $1.2 billion budget. My point along this was that any study or any conversation about this has to be done region-wide. It just can't be burned. It just can't be borne by one of the poorest cities in upstate in New York State and in the country. We shouldn't have to pay for something like that by ourselves. That's been my point. I've been consistent on that. I've said that before. 5 top poorest zip codes in New York State, top 3 are in the city of Rochester. All we're saying is that if you're going to spend $1 million on a study and that involves something that is a regional-wide thing, it just can't be borne by the city of Rochester.
Okay. In the future, but you're still open to the notion of a public utility?
I think you'd have to have a broad conversation about that. I mean, it's a massive, massive undertaking, and something like that would happen long after any of us are here. But the bottom line is you have to have a study first for that. And
you don't think we've seen enough to say?
And a study would cost money. Well, I mean, the proposal is that what folks want is they want a study. And the argument has been, the city should just pay for the study, even though the agreement was any type of study like that would have to be paid region-wide or with the county.
I think William thinks you're being obstructionist. That
you're
dodging because you don't want it.
No. I mean, and again, City council could pass it tomorrow if they wanted to, right? I mean, so again, I mean, people forget that there's. I wish I had as much power as people always think that they give me. It's amazing.
You're not.
I'm just amazed. You get these calls.
There's a balance of power,
right?
still?
Yeah, exactly. There's still a balance of power. You still have the judicial, legislative, and executive branch.
Okay. Sam wrote in to say, Evan, saying that the PAB had a rough start is a major euphemism, and the millions of dollars spent in no way justifies the lack of impact and, ironically, their lack of accountability. So Sam's a big critic, and Sam, you're right. I was probably euphemizing. It was not the start of probably the first couple of years of the PAB that anybody envisioned or wanted. They have been saddled from the start with a lack of disciplinary power, which they had hoped for, and now without investigatory power, nobody that I've talked to disagrees that this could really warp what the PAB can do. So I wasn't trying to euphemize and do any PR. I was being a little cheeky.
I think
cheeky.
And let me defend you here, Evan, even though it's your show. I think the point that you were making, and I think it's the point that everyone was making, is that there's been improvement in terms of the leadership and operation at the PAB from where it was two or 3 years ago. And I think that, and I'm an objective advisor. I mean, I'm actually kind of divorced from the PAB because as the administration, I can't be involved in any of their stuff. I only get one appointee. But as someone who's really an observer, I can say that there's been improvement in terms of leadership at the board and as well as the executive director over the last year and a half, 2 years.
And Chad wants to know, he says there's when it comes to affordable housing and inadequate supply. So I want to talk to you about housing and housing supply. And interestingly, both of the other candidates for mayor on this program were very critical of By the Block. Shashi Sinha told us that is the chief example that he would point to of government waste and inefficiency. Wow. He says spending more than $500,000 per house in the By the Block program is a waste of money and not a good way to deal with a housing supply.
Yeah, but that's just By the Block is one tool in the toolbox, and it's obviously it's coming because number one, he's misinformed, and he should know. He must not be a numbers guy. If you build a house in Pittsford, or if you build it in Rochester on Samuel McCree like we're doing, the cost is going to be the same. And what we were able to do with By the Block is we were able to subsidize it to get people who, and Mr. Sinha probably never lived in a red line neighborhood, right? I doubt it. He probably doesn't even know what a red line neighborhood is. To make sure that people who were shut out of the housing market, like Tia and others, names who I've actually visited, get a chance at home ownership. And we had outside dollars, not city dollars, outside dollars that we were able to use to bring the price down to have people to be able to afford their housing. And by the way, name me another city in New York State that is working with nonprofit organizations in the private sector to build brand new single family homes in their cities. Let me think of any. There isn't any. Only Rochester is doing that. But By the Block is just one piece of the overall puzzle. In the last 3 years, 5 months and 14 days, Rochester has built between, minus the single family homes, in terms of market rate and affordable housing units, close to 4,000. There's a city that is double our size. They have a goal to build 5,000 units in 10 years. So, I'm not the Energizer Bunny, but I think we've done pretty well. And also, you know who's recognizing our work? New York State Home for Community Renewal. Other people around the country are coming to Rochester to see what we're doing in terms of accelerating our home ownership and our affordable housing stock. If you remember, again, I came in during COVID. Building had completely stopped. And I worked very closely with our state delegation in New York State to accelerate the number of units that we are building. And the number that we have online, you can go back and watch clips from our State of the City where I outline these are coming up. But I will never, ever apologize for making sure that we were making investments in neighborhoods that were redlined, where they were shut out, left behind, and left for dead. We absolutely will not apologize for pushing that equity, and that is what By the Block is all about. And by the way, By the Block also complemented the private investment that other private developers were building there, so it then creates a multiplier effect. So I think that's something that has to happen, and you have to get deep, because what you find is that you hear from a lot of other people a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of results. I'm a results-driven person. So I would say people should go and actually talk to the people who were involved with By the Block, the Greater Rochester Housing Partnership, Habitat for Humanity, the other organizations that were involved to see what the cost was and how we were able to actually make it a very successful program.
Well, if you look at the Zillow Heat Index, which is measures is it a better market for sellers or buyers, Rochester is number one in the country
Hottest market right now.
by a mile for sellers, not if you want to buy.
That's right.
Terrible market for if you want to buy.
you wanna buy.
Because there's no inventory.
There's no inventory. I did a radio program. I won't say which one because it wasn't this one. And I had some realtors on. This was last March. And I said, how many houses are on the market in Monroe County? You know how many it was? 20.
Yeah.
20. Now, there's more now because...
But there's like 300
Right,
now.
there's 300 now.
But 10 years ago, there were 3,000.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
they're still not inventory.
They're not inventory, and that's why you have to build. So for anyone to try to disparage one piece of the puzzle is really concerning to me. And when you disparage a piece of the puzzle for individuals that are getting new homes built in areas where they were redlined,
I think they're just saying
More to
that's 2 dozen, 3 dozen homes. We need hundreds or thousands of homes.
And I think you have to do both. And I think and what we're doing is we're also working. We're having announcements on this with other outside developers that can take it to the next level, and they can build more at scale, at mass. But you have to do everything. You can't just say we're not. And remember, those close to 60 plus homes that we built, those are thousands of people still. Got a family of 4, family of 5, family of 6, right? So there are people that are being impacted in a very meaningful way in terms of being those single homes. And by the way, there are 60, 65, 70 more homes, 100 homes than we had 4 years ago.
Do you think in a second term we will see a ramping up of total housing supply?
Well, I hope so, but a lot of it depends on the macroeconomic environment and what we have going on. You ever watch Ferris Bueller?
Of course.
And do you remember the scene where where he says, "Smoot Hawley"? Anybody? Tariffs?
Yeah.
Anybody? Well, I mean, that has a major effect on prices and things that are going up. And if anyone thinks that does not affect them, it will. So we get a lot of our timber, our lumber, our steel from Canada. We have not had a trade deal, new trade deal with them yet. That affects everything that builds. I mean, there's developers and builders that I've talked to that have pushed off some of their plans because the prices have gone up and there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think a lot of it will depend on what's happening in the macroeconomic environment, and that will give us a lot of clues on where building will go. But in terms of our building, we have in the pipeline hundreds of thousands of more housing units that are there, more for rental. But we will have to form again these strategic partnerships to make sure that we have more single family homes. And I can't announce now because it's not certain yet. But we will have someone who will be working with to build more of those innovative single family homes in the city of Rochester.
Last thing on housing, I'm getting the sense that you and Mr. Sinha don't agree on a lot, but we'll see.
I don't know much about the gentleman, so
okay.
I only know what you telling me.
He did say on this program that there are several thousand vacant lots in the city where homes used to be. He said new homes could be constructed, modular homes, using existing infrastructure that would reduce the typical building cost to less than half. And he says then you can pursue this strategy. You can have 3,000 new homes in existing lots with existing infrastructure, and that's what the city should be doing.
Yeah, I don't know. Mr. Sinha might want to find out about something called prevailing wage. He may not understand that. But again, look, the bottom line is that we have an all of the above approach as it relates to housing. And if you talk to many large cities, they are looking to us, including the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. They just highlighted Rochester for us in our home building and affordable housing and everything else. The bottom line is that you have to have an all of the above approach. I say build, baby, build, and that has been my approach. So we have converted. We have converted old manufactured structures. We've converted old office buildings. We've built new. We've formed strategic partnerships to build housing, like we're doing with First Genesis, who's building both senior apartments and also single-family homes, like we're doing with a bunch of other organizations. That's how you build more housing. And one of the reasons why Rochester market is so hot is because compared to the rest of the country, we're still pretty affordable. When you can get an average house in the city of Rochester for about $150,000, we're still cheaper than Boston and New York City and some of the other places. So this is going to be something that's going to continue. But I will tell you that we're not going to do any shortcuts. We're not putting people in crap. So the reason why buy the block houses cost money is because they're built with custom materials. They're built with things the same way it would be done in Pittsford. So for Mr. Sinha or anybody else, is that his name?
Yeah, Sinha. Yeah.
So what is it?
Sinha.
Sinha. Yeah, we are going to make sure that we build quality housing for our residents, and we will never apologize for working to build houses in redline neighborhoods because we're still dealing with the sins of the past.
How do you feel about where things are with opioids? It's an issue across the country. It's an issue in rural areas. It's an issue in suburbs. It's an issue in cities. Certainly has been here. Tell people what you've been working on there.
It's our number one. It's one of our top issues. Probably I put it up there with mental health, number one, number two, opioids, number three, gun violence. Those are all the top three, tied for three. But opioids is rising to the top. We wanted to make sure that we started getting to people on the street, so we launched our neighborhood ambassador program. We targeted 4 key areas of the city: Monroe Avenue, Jefferson Avenue, Lau Avenue, and North Clinton Avenue, and we've had some success. We've graduated our first couple of classes, and the idea is to get people connected to services, get them connected to jobs, but more importantly, get them connected to treatment. We are going to have to treat our way out of this. And the challenge for the city is that the city is a place where people come to buy their opioids. I was telling you off the air that we did a study to see where people were coming from, and people were coming from Greece, and they were coming from Batavia, and they were coming from Fairport to come and get their opioids. So we sent letters to them saying, "Hey, here are the services that are available. Let us help you." So that's the one thing, the treatment thing. And then we also have to work to cut off and choke the supply and go after the dealers that are giving people deadly opioids. Every day in the city of Rochester, someone dies of an opioid. I mean, it blows gun violence and car accidents and stuff out of the water, but we just don't talk about it. I think it's still taboo. I think people are embarrassed because if you're both of your parents are doctors and they're doing well, they don't want to talk about their child dying of an opioid addiction. So we have to remove the stigma. We formed a joint partnership with Monroe County, the Fatality Overdose Review Committee, and it's made up of all the leaders in the county and city to look at what we can do as it relates to stopping opioids and really creating the story for every person that passes away to track back to see what happened, to see how we can try to intervene and stop this. It is a horrible tragedy across the country as it relates to the opioid epidemic, and it is one of the saddest things. And we want to do our part. Obviously, we work with the county. We used our some of our opioid settlement money to launch this neighborhood ambassador program, and we think that it's a cause worth fighting for because we've lost way too many lives. And it cuts across income, race, economic status, where you live. It doesn't matter. It is killing people, and we have to make sure that we continue to focus on it.
All right, moving quick because time's running out. Michael says, could you ask the mayor why our elected officials aren't doing anything to improve the horrible conditions that people are forced to live in that nursing home in Charlotte? He's talking about Waterview Heights.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Shout out to Deanna Dewberry and News 10 NBC. Credit where it's due. She has done multiple reports on Waterview Heights. Is a facility where, according to her reporting, people have not gotten meds on time. They haven't had bed sheets changed. They've had poor conditions. Visitors not allowed.
Yeah.
It's been really tough. And Michael's saying, can something be done there?
Yeah, that's more state, county. But again, he's got my support. I have zero patience for individuals that disrespect and disregard our elderly. And when they go to a nursing home, they should be treated well. And that includes this Waterview Heights place that he's talking about. So I think from my perspective where I sit, I always say, what can I do within my respective place and station? Although nursing homes are run by the state, one of the things I can do is reach out to the state, and I also can reach out to Waterview Heights and let them know that I have concerns about those horrible conditions that the caller that the writer just mentioned.
All right, now let's flip to a different age sector, youth. You've had a lot of emphasis on making sure kids have opportunities.
Yes,
they're on a good path.
Yeah, I mean,
down to our last 2 minutes. What do you want people to know?
I wouldn't be where I am without the opportunities that I got as a kid. We continue to expand opportunities for kids. We ran a pilot program that is now almost permanent for 12 to 14-year-olds. They're not old enough to get a work permit, but they're old enough to learn about what it means to work, and we can give them a stipend. And we've done that. And for the last 3 years, we've had more kids in our Summer of Opportunity program than ever before. Record number of young people. And I have a belief that if young people are working and engaged in good activities, they'll stay out of trouble. Our esports, we launched the first ever esports program in the city of Rochester, which is, they didn't have that in libraries and in rec centers when we were growing up, Evan.
That's true.
But that's there. And then we also added mental health providers in all of our centers. So that way young people have an opportunity to go there. And I did that because I have a group called the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and they took a survey and their top issue was mental health. And I said, how could we not ask them to go to mental health providers, but to have them there available for them? And we added them into into the rec center. So very important, very big focus on youth because they're our future leaders of tomorrow, and we need to make sure that they have a strong foundation. And I'm proud that we've been able to give them that.
1 minute left here. What's going on with the Office of Financial Empowerment?
Office of Financial Empowerment. Stay tuned. As you know, we have our Bank On coalition to make sure individuals are bankable, getting bank accounts, and then our Prepare to Prosper program, which is making sure entrepreneurs have the opportunity to know how to run their business. And stay tuned to our Future Fund, which will launch in September, which will provide every single kindergartner that comes into school in the Rochester City School District a savings account that will be portable, and they will have it from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they'll be able to use that for trade school or college or work or careers or whatever it is they want to be able to do. It's all about making sure that we create financial empowerment for our residents so that way we can set up a strong financial future for them.
Now, is that R, the letter R, R-O-U-R?
R, like Rochester.
Like Rochester.
Our
The
Future
R
Fund.
Future Fund,
So
launching
more-
in September.
Yep, and I'm sure you'll have Angela Rollins and
I hope
some of my
so.
other folks on here to talk about it. We still are working out all the kinks, but we'll have some very, very cool announcements coming up. And in fact, I have a big meeting next week to kind of put the bow on this thing, and I can't wait to roll it out to the community and for families to be able to take advantage of it.
MalikEvans.org is the website. The incumbent is running for re-election, and that's the third in our series of conversations. Previously, you heard Shashi Sinha, Mary Lupien, and now Malik Evans on this program. All Democrats on the ballot in the June 24th primary. And invite you to watch the only debate of the season that we'll be hosting, and that's 2 weeks from tonight, May 28th. 8 p.m. on WXXI platforms. It's a Voice of the Voter debate with the candidates. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here. Nice to see you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Evan. Great to be on.
More connections coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.